Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Odur Jagero, and this is Dialogues with Jagero. We are talking with Daniel Orenge, a gentleman that has been having a battle, and I think that now this battle is coming to an end. Is it coming to an end, or is it's subdued?
We say we are in recovery. We are recovering. It's continuous tense.
Yeah.
It's a daily battle.
Yeah.
But it gets easier over time.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm going to be talking to Mr. Daniel is because in my family we have had a lot of problem with alcoholism, and as Orenge was telling me, there is a difference between alcoholism and drunkenness.
Yes, there is.
Right. Mm. And so my father was an alcoholic. My brother was an alcoholic, and then the last one was also an alcoholic. And both of them, my two brothers, finally decided to quit alcohol.
Yes.
But after a lot of damage done to their careers, done to their lives, and done to everybody around them. My father basically died out of depression, out of alcoholism.
Yeah.
And it was at the tail end of his life, it was very difficult to see the man because now we couldn't see the father that we used to have.
Yeah.
He was just a shell of his old self. So, and then back in my village, there is a lot of changa brewing and a lot of drinking.
Yeah.
And right now, lots of those kids in the village are basically drinking and doing boda work, you know. So thank you very much for showing up on this episode. Dialogues with Jagero is fairly new,
okay.
But I think that this week has been bonkers for us because we have trended really well online, especially on TikTok. I was told that I could probably monetize the channel next year in June, and within a week, last 6 days, it was monetized. So I think the story is from people like you. And that is why each guest is an opportunity for us to tell bold stories and to spread the word.
Absolutely.
How are you doing now, before we go back to what we are going to be talking about? How is it now with your life? How are you doing?
Well, I can say I'm doing super. I'm on the right path in terms of career. I've found my purpose. I'm doing things that make me happy. At the end of each day, I can say I'm fulfilled. Though it's still tough. The thing about in recovery, you just learn how to deal with life's issues differently. In the past, it used to be the drink. A bit of noise in the house from the wife, you drink. A bit of stress from this place, you drink. Even when you're happy, you drink. So now we learn how to manage our emotions better. And with that, we are able to progress in life. Yeah.
Most people do not understand when they are told, like we were talking before this interview, and you told me that a lot of people think that's just a switch, that you can switch. What is wrong with you? Just forget about it. Just like drinking water, forget about it. What is your definition of alcoholism, addiction to alcohol? What is it? Can you broadly tell us from your experience of what you have learned?
So what I've learned is, if you look at an alcoholic, you know, and remember I mentioned to you, it's not good to call them drunkards because the drunkardness is the outward behavior. Alcoholism is the condition that causes drunkardness. So they say research says 70% of alcoholics are alcoholics because of genetic predisposition. 30% is because of childhood trauma. So I fall in the 70%. So even for you, Jagero, you're predisposed to alcoholism. If it doesn't catch you, it could catch your child if he drinks. So you know, alcoholism is, what I learned is that there's a gene. So we react differently to alcohol. Example, I used to smoke cigarettes, but I never got addicted to them. I used to smoke them at a particular point in the night. But somebody else is addicted to cigarettes. Why? We are different genetically. So we learned that there's a gene they've called the X factor that is dormant. But immediately it's exposed to alcohol, the addiction begins. So everybody has a story about when they started until when they realized it's a problem. And you go through a cycle of addiction. They start with regular use, then it becomes risky, then becomes dependency, addiction, then rock bottom. So what happens is, when I drink alcohol, the alcohol causes the brain to release a hormone called dopamine, the happy hormone. But for me, mine causes a spike as compared to you. So me, when I drink, my dopamine spikes as compared to you. And that's what now the brain starts to identify as the provider of dopamine. So everything else starts to become boring, even sex, even food. The brain starts identifying that dopamine is only achieved through drinking. Now that's where the vicious cycle begins, because for you, you'll have your 4 beers and you'll have enough. But me, I don't know when to have enough. So with that spike of dopamine, and I end up maybe blacking out, tomorrow when I wake up, the dopamine level is very low as compared to yours. And that's where the common kutoa lock comes from. So I have to come and stabilize it. But stabilizing it means I go over above again. So that cycle keeps on going on. But we don't see it. We're only seeing the behavior of somebody drinking, who anapenda pombe, he just loves alcohol. But that's not the case. It's his brain chasing after dopamine. Then the outward behavior now starts leading to downward trends. You cannot do your education well. You can't keep a job. Can't keep a family. Just because you are sick. Because now your brain is wired differently. It is totally dependent on a chemical that helps it generate that dopamine. Yeah, so it becomes a chase, a vicious cycle after that dopamine. And it's never enough. Because now you stop drinking beer because it's not enough. You can't get that fast high. So you go to spirits. Then after spirits, you can't have that spirit haitoshi. Like for me, I could drink easily a 750 ml and still look at you normal, like no difference. But the consequences would be there tomorrow. Either hospitalization, or I'd be sick, or the hangover would be severe. And then the only remedy, kutoa lock.
So let's go back to growing up.
Yeah.
So I would like you to tell the audience, where did you grow up? Where were you born? How did you grow up? Your education, and then after that, then we can try to trace where you had that first drink.
Yeah.
You Blake yenye uliniambia. Yeah.
Anyways, I hope the definition,
yes, it's very clear.
It was clear.
Very clear.
Okay,
yeah.
good. So I can say I was born into a bit of privilege. My parents were doing fairly well in life. And so one thing I like to mention is I believe my dad had a wound, because he was a wealthy man at some point in life and he lost all his money, because we lived in Lavington. And then we moved to Jamhuri. We lost the house, and it was because of politics. So I think through that, things changed for him. So he became a different individual, became very harsh. And so I moved from school to school, dependent on how well we were doing financially. So I went to about 5 primary schools. Private, public, being moved around. So going to high school, I mean, we didn't have much freedom as we would have wanted to. I remember it was almost illegal to be found outside playing. You know, it would be, why aren't you in the house reading? And I was very active as a child. Very, very, very active. Since I was a baby, I was very active. I used to love to dance. I used to love to run. So all that was caged, you know. And I mean, I feel like as I was growing up, that should have been allowed to thrive to some extent with a balance. So even through high school, there was a lot of restrictions. Not that I'm blaming my parents or anything. I just feel like now that I've grown up, I see it differently of how it could have been handled. They did their best. So I couldn't wait to get to that point when I have freedom. And I got that freedom when I finished high school. I started going out in Form 3. I used to...
Which school were you at?
I was in a school called Hospital Hill. That's where I finished from. And so I used to sneak out of the house at night and go clubbing. But it was not about alcohol. It was just about being out there. I remember there was an event called Sman of Experience that I went for once. I've never forgotten that event because I stood on top of a big speaker and I danced the whole night, you know. And it was not about alcohol. It was about having fun and being with people. Then I would get back into the house before my parents know, though I was caught a few times. So after Form 4, I grew a hard head and I said, enough is enough. I'm going to go out. So the drinking started, but it wasn't really an issue. When I went to, so my brother, who is abroad, thought it's best I do something called IB. IB is in St. Mary's. It's like Form 5 and 6, it's called International Baccalaureate. And he said it's good I do that, so it'll increase my chances of going abroad. So I went to St. Mary's. Now in St. Mary's, I always loved rugby. So I joined the rugby team and I found a family. So instead of reading, I was focusing on rugby. So there was an incident we went for, there was a tournament called Black Rock that was owned by St. Mary's, and it had not been home for many years. We won. Hosted. Yes, being hosted. It was our tournament. We won it back. And I remember us going to drink. I remember serving vodka Smirnoff in a glass like this and feeling it till here. Na nilikunywa yote, drank all of it. Flash! It's like I was really trying to catch up with life. It's like I felt like I'd missed so much. Of course, after that...
Was this because, do you think it is because of the harshness or the strictness?
Yes, I feel there was too much restriction. Restriction is important in parenting, but there needs to be an understanding as to why and a balance. A child needs to play and a child needs to read. You know, there are times I talk to my children and I make sure they understand why I'm giving them these rules. So it's not just a command. You know, when you just give commands, you know, your child will always look at you as somebody who just gives commands. So even at the point where you can't give commands and you hope to reason with them, I think you can't. Yeah. So it's important that even with your children, they understand why you have to put something in place. It's very important in this new age, and like during our parents' time, where if you don't listen, unapata kiboko. So I was sort of rebelling. Not sort of, I was rebelling indirectly, without even knowing, subconsciously. So that night, of course, I blacked out. And I was a baggage to my friends. They had to carry me around. So that's where I can say the drinking started. Because it wasn't really a problem then, but I can remember that's when I really engaged in consumption of alcohol. Moving forward, of course, my parents realized that international baccalaureate is expensive and Daniel is not paying attention to studies. So let him go straight to university. My dad told me, leave that. I was very disappointed. But I was disappointed because I was leaving rugby. And then I went to USIU. That's where the drinking began. If you look at the cycles of addiction, there's a regular use, then it goes to risky use. So at
But then let's go back to this Smirnoff that you failed. What happened during that episode?
If I can remember, I you know, I remember there was this girl who had noticed me because of the rugby, and she was obviously interested. But of course I blew it because that night I drank that vodka. I think I even did 2 glasses. And we tried going out, and I don't remember most part of the night, but my friends told me how they had to carry me around because I was out, blacked out. I remember waking up at some point at a party, and I was still very drunk, and then I probably blacked out again. It was too much for my brain to handle at that particular point. Of course, later down the line, you'll as we discuss, you will realize that through that addiction, you gain tolerance. Yeah. So that was that one episode. But one thing I used to be very distracted. You know, once you had that drink, it's like your brain gets exposed to something new. Yeah, it's like my brain discovered something because I was always looking forward to the next opportunity to drink. Subconsciously, you think it's looking forward to have fun, but it's looking forward to drink. And of course, then I couldn't focus on my studies. I was exposed to a new life. And when you're from a cage, when you taste this new life, you want it. And that's where the problem was. And I don't know if I had a mentor, it would have done anything to assist. Maybe not. But now, getting into university, I was exposed to more freedom. USIU. Now, with USIU, man, USIU was nice.
Everybody says USIU is always nice.
Yeah, USIU was nice.
What makes USIU nice?
The culture. There's a bit of freedom. It's relaxed. And then, of course, the ladies, you know.
How different are USIU ladies from the Nairobi University ladies?
How can I say? I can say most of them, their upbringing, they're a bit more free. And, okay, let me not be quoted, but I can say they are kept well. Their backgrounds seem a bit more. Not that I'm saying the ones from Nairobi Uni. I wouldn't know the difference. I'm speaking from what I know. And, of course, the culture they get into exposes them to the party life. So it's a bit more relaxed. It's a bit more relaxed. The dress code isn't too strict. So it was yes, like Strathmore. So it was like I discovered heaven. And so it had a routine, and I think it still does. Every Thursday is when people would finish classes, so we'd start drinking on Thursday at the bars outside there. And that's
outside the school?
Outside the school. So we'd drink every Thursday. But one thing I'd like to mention is, once in high school, I used to try and play a lot of rugby. I used to love sports. But at Hospital Hill, there was an incident that once happened. When I joined the school, I think I joined it in Form 3. I drew some attention. It's a mixed school. So I drew some attention from the ladies. So the boys were not happy. They came and ganged up on me in the dorm. They looked for an excuse. And when they did that, something came out in me, and I said I need to learn to maybe defend myself more. And I realized there are weights around. People used to carry stones. And I joined that club. And ever since I joined that club, that's one of the things. The reason why I mentioned that is because that is the introduction I had into the gym. So I was very passionate about the gym. Even in high school, I used to love lifting weights. Even on holiday, I'd go look for a gym and lift weights because it felt good. So in USIU, there was a gym. So that's the first place I went, looked for a gym, and I was very regular. And so that helped me stay a bit focused. So I'd exercise the whole week. Then I go drink on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Friday, of course, we were living in Kilimani. So I had my Kilimani friends who would drink. Then on Monday, go back to school, exercise, sweat out the alcohol, and you're back and you're fresh. So the exercise did help. I know many people who didn't finish university. So for me, whenever I would exercise, it would put me in a position to think better, make better decisions. I would ask myself questions like, after all this exercise, what do I need? Do I need Kenya cane, or do I need 8 chapatis and dengu? You know, we were young then. You go for the food and you go home. But another substance that we used to partake of almost daily was marijuana. Marijuana used to be our unwinding drug for the evening, especially when I moved near school. So we used to smoke weed almost daily. So it was, you can't have both. You can either study or you can either party. So I tried struggling with juggling both.
Just marijuana, weed, and alcohol.
And alcohol. So the thing about me and drinking is, each time then I used to drink, I used to black out. all the time. I used to drink, I used to black out.
Was it in the amount?
No, I don't think so. I just think my body was not used to that. And it's just genes, as I say. Because all my friends never used to black out, but I used to black out. Not that I was the only one who used to black out. There were other individuals who I believe were.
You mentioned that you could take 750 ml. That's a lot.
That is much later on in life.
Okay.
Here, you drink a quarter. As a matter of fact, even I remember the first time I drank this harsh spirit. So we were going for a rugby tournament with a friend of mine. It was called Floodlights. It still is there. And I drank a quarter of Safari Cane. This used to be called Safari Cane. And I blacked out the whole rugby tournament. And my friend didn't. So there was something about me and alcohol and blacking out. And I was very popular for that. They used to call me, rugby people would say, crack, meaning you can't manage your drink. And it was very frustrating. So each time I'd be drinking not to black out. Not to have a good time. Not to black out. But I'd still black out. And I lost so many phones. My brother used to send me phones from abroad. And I lost so many phones. It wasn't a good thing. I remember when once there was this magazine, I don't know if it's still there, it's called The Pulse.
Yeah, I see something called Pulse on Facebook. I don't know what it is.
Yes, it was very popular that was around 2005. And I blacked out at a club in Village Market and I was on the floor. This guy came and took a picture of me. And he put there, another nigger. And then that was the quote, the caption, another nigger. It was very embarrassing going to school and everybody has seen that. You don't even.
This was all.
Yes, I was trending, done. And those are the red flags, Jagero. Those are the red flags that somebody's an alcoholic. But you see, the thing is, when you tell somebody they're an alcoholic, you don't want to be identified with that because everybody knows an alcoholic is because of the behavior. You cannot manage your drink. You're very responsible. Poor upbringing or lack of morals, that's who you are. And that's not the case. It's not the case. So no one wants to identify with that term, an alcoholic, and that's why we need to really demystify it. So that went on through my university life. I mean, I would really try and keep fit so I could finish my studies. Unfortunately, I was able to finish, but I finished late. Instead of a degree for 4 years, it took me almost 6. And I remember there's a lady who told me, Daniel, you're becoming a grandpa in that school. It was very embarrassing because there are times you realize you're in your 4th year and there's some courses you need to redo in first year. So you're sitting with first years redoing them. But I did it and I finished. I'm certain I would have done much better if I had dealt with this issue then. And that's one of the reasons why I share my story. So hopefully people who are in university can listen. And if they identify with my struggle, they could do something about it early enough. So I was fortunate to finish in 2010. But as I was finishing, I had plunged deeper into the cycle of drinking because even through my internship, I didn't really do internship. I'd go to work on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Monday, Tuesday, hangover. And possibly after your hangover, you wake up, you're tired. Your brain, the withdrawal, you start.
A lot of people don't understand. People don't drink as us. Don't understand what really hangover is. Is it inability to wake up? What is going on in your system that makes it so bad that you don't want to go and do any activity?
You see, now, like for an alcoholic, you probably overdrank without choice. You don't know when to put off the tap. So what happens is, of course, there's a lot of science around what a hangover is. Maybe your water levels are down. But what I can say is that dopamine, whenever it drops, and then you start developing what is called withdrawal symptoms, that is what I could call a hangover because you're not yourself. You're sick. Your mind it went overboard yesterday. You cannot get that dopamine rush in that abundance and be normal tomorrow. It'll be lower. So you find somebody having a withdrawal, somebody's moods are different because the dopamine is beneath the normal. So those hangovers now were regular, but everybody has hangovers, so you think it's normal. But yours is not normal. It's every day. And even marijuana has hangovers. It has hangovers. You could oversleep. You wake up, you're not yourself. Because whenever you take this substance, your brain goes into hyperdrive, So tomorrow, it's behind. So it needs to catch up. And how do you catch up? You either are patient with yourself or you take more to try and bring that dopamine. You at least unasikia mtu somebody is now back to normal because he has taken something. So we used to deal with hangovers with marijuana because marijuana would help you eat. And if after you've eaten, you're fine. But still, after you've eaten, now you're ready to go on
and drink again.
And of course, by this time, you're not drinking good alcohol. You're drinking second generation stuff.
By the way, sometimes, where were you getting the money to drink? Because you are, so far, we don't have a job here.
I mean, getting the alcohol to drink before going to the club, you would, as a student, you would find a way of telling your parents things. Not that I used to get much cash, but then a bottle of Kenya Kin, 750 ml, was 350. So if you have 200 and your friend has 200, you're already drunk. Yeah, you're already drunk, so it's not much. And there are privileged people around. So you would get alcohol before going to the club. Now, going to the club is where now there was a challenge because you have to buy beer. I did Mr. and Miss USIU. And my friends made fun of me once and they told me, because you needed to expose your talent. And they told me, Danny, your talent is you can go to the club with 10 bob and come out high. That's my talent. They never understand how is this person drunk. But maybe it's because I'm a good talker and I'd get people to buy me alcohol. Not a proud moment, but the question you had asked is how would the alcohol for before the club? It was readily available. And
there are also people who say that if getting alcohol sometimes is not as difficult as getting money for food. So, for example, they would say that I'll buy you alcohol for 800 bob, but I will give you 200 shillings to go and have your supper. What do you think this is true?
Yes, 100%. I mean, that's the definition of the friends you have. Most of the friends you have who you drink with are drinking buddies. So they would support you with your habit because either you're an entertainer, you're the one who makes them laugh, or they know that today you're down, tomorrow you'll cover me. So it's all about alcohol. It's not about the serious things of life. It's not about, so you find that somebody's hanging out with people. Like I have this friend, at times, he hangs out with people who have money and he seems to be okay. But he cannot ask them for 1,000 bob. So he'll come, I'll see a text from him, send me 1,000. And I'm like, what? Meaning the people he's with, that's not a conversation you can have with them. It's either you're in a good place or you're not. And that's the problem with many men. We're in the wrong circles. You can't be real. You have to maintain a particular front. So alcohol has never been a challenge. That's one thing. Somebody would buy you alcohol but not buy you food. But also, it's because you're not at a point to tell them you need food. These are people who you only meet when it's time to drink. So alcohol was available. I used to stay in this place called Roysambu. We started even drinking keg. We used to drink a lot of keg, Anything that was available, and it was not an issue. When you're young, there are things you get away with. If you're handsome, you get away with a lot until life becomes real. So even the ladies would like you, even though you're drinking Napoleon. You'd get away with that. Wait, now you finish university. Your parents pull off. You're on your own. Bas. Hapo sasa ndio shida ilianza. I really, really tried to keep a job.
Can we add some water?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
So we go on. So I was able to graduate in 2010. I fairly did well, fairly. And I wanted to keep my freedom in Roysambu. I didn't want to go back home. So we looked for jobs. When I say we...
Freedom means that you have the opportunity to drink, you have the opportunity to get out and stay late outside.
Yes, and possibly even have a lady.
possibly have a lady.
Yes. We were young. We were having fun.
Yeah.
So I started working at a call center, and we did our best. It wasn't sustainable. Nyumba, the house was closed. So I went into staying in a friend's house. Now, you're addicted to a lifestyle, but you cannot sustain it.
How bad is it at this time?
By this time, the reality hasn't dawned on me that I have a problem.
This is about 22 years old, 25 years old?
We could say 25. I don't know whether to say that I was addicted to alcohol then. Can't quite remember. But I was addicted to the lifestyle. Taking things casually. You know, being high during the day. On marijuana. You know, everything is easy. But now, the reality is you have to fend for yourself. So you can't do that. So, in order to stop feeling any worse, smoke weed. So a lot of marijuana, because you can't afford the alcohol. And any opportunity to drink, you're there. So, of course, staying at my friend's place and hiding, at times going home, then I lost a lot of weight. Because now you're not eating the way you used to eat. 1 meal a day.
Sometimes none.
Sometimes none. Noodles. Now you find the money you get, you want to buy more weed. And hide from reality. That's what happens. You hide from reality. Many a times, that's the thing about...
There is a very big distinction that I hear people talk about between weed and alcohol. A lot of people say weed is fine. You know, some people, like if you talk to, people say that weed can actually interfere with your sanity. Some people, like my friends, I've got friends who take weed. They're just fine. And then there are people who take weed and then they don't look okay.
Yeah.
Something is really wrong. Either they're addicted to it. I don't know if you have that experience. Can you really distinguish between weed addiction and alcohol addiction before we go on?
For me, in my case, weed used to supplement. I never really got addicted to weed. But weed used to give me the high to go to bed because I couldn't get that high from alcohol. Number one, because it was expensive. And number two, it would need a lot of alcohol. So weed used to supplement the alcohol and get high. So as I mentioned...
At the dopamine level.
Yes, basically, exactly. So basically, whatever works for you may not work for me. There's somebody who can smoke weed once a week and he's fine. Next week, he doesn't have to. Occasionally, he would. Good for him. But for some other people, their body responds differently. So you'll find him starting to smoke more. The same way I'm talking about drinking. Yeah. There are people in rehab who are there because of marijuana. Is it because they smoked too much? Yes. But why did they smoke too much? Genetics. The brain discovered that marijuana releases excess dopamine. And the brain is always chasing dopamine. And when it finds the substance that does that for it, that's it. Nothing else matters in this world. You come and try and talk to somebody, it will not make sense because the brain already is aligned with this particular drug of choice. So for people, it's different. It's not the same for all of us. My CEO once told me that every drug you use has its particular level of influence on you. Whether you use it occasionally, it has its issues to a particular level. And for him, he was able to identify his. Like he would say, whenever I drink beer, I'd find in the evening I argue with my wife. You know, that's the level for him. For somebody else, whenever he drinks, he loses money. It could not be an addiction, but he has realized, he's conscious of what this does for him. So you can choose. So this thing of being a social user is also debatable because it could have its effects on you that you become comfortable with. Yeah, and I normally tell people to be conscious of what this does and you can make your decision about it. So we're talking about weed. So marijuana, it depends with genes. when I see somebody who is psychotic, somebody who is in rehab, now that I understand addiction, I know that for him, he cannot smoke normally or socially like the rest. And the earlier he finds that out, the better for him. And weed, of course, has some serious effects, the psychosis. I saw some people in rehab, before they became normal, it took time as compared to alcohol. Yeah, so
we were this place that where you are alone, you have to fend for yourself, things are not good.
Things are not good. So I hustled for a job, and I finally got another job. EABL.
What a coincidence, brother.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence.
Wow. That's where now the alcohol was drunk.
Yeah.
But still, it wasn't really the beer of EABL that I drank. I got in, I've done a lot of sales. I'm a salesman, and I got in as a trade developer. That was during the Mutuzo time. So during the Mutuzo time, the bars were closed early. So our work, we were hired to go and push for sales of spirits in bars. Push for sales so what people can carry their stock home. You buy a quarter, don't buy 2 beers, buy a half, of the EABL spirit. So you needed to have a car so you can carry stock. So most of the time, stock ilikuwa just at the back. So you're driving around.
You need to have a car, they give you a car, or
No, you have to get your own car. So I hustled. It was another long story. I hustled. I actually got my brother abroad to help us fix my dad's old car. But I never got to use it, thank God. I'd have died. I was about to drive to Kisii in a car without a handbrake. I'd have died. And by this time, I was drinking. Every time with alcoholism, when you get the money, pombe. I was drinking, we used to drink this thing called Kenya King. It used to be in a plastic container. And I remember
This is not sold by EABL.
No. It was like, how much was it? It was like 120. I remember my friend who was also hired at the same time as me. He was, I think he was working at Machakos. Me, I was working at Kirinyaga area. I was posted there. And would meet together in the morning. And of course, yesterday we had drunk and we were all going back to our posts. And I would buy quarters. And I would drink a whole quarter like water before my day starts so I can feel normal and I can drive. Then I would drive down to Kirinyaga. Then I'd go and sell. Selling was not an issue. I used to do well. But I can imagine if I was sober, how much I'd have done.
Just a minute.
Yeah. So I'd drink a lot of that cheap spirit. And then, of course, by the time you get your stock from the distributor to go sell, you have more spirit at the back. And you can drink some and you'll do something around how you will pay for it because you're buying it at the wholesale price. And man, I'm telling you, it's just God's grace that kept me through all that. There's a time I remember coming back from Kirinyaga I was coming back to Reisambu. Driving. And I was drunk. I drank about, probably by that time I drank 4 quarters. Now by this time, my tolerance has built. I'm not blacking out.
You're not blacking out anymore?
No more. And I used to feel proud about that. Finally.
Things are good.
Things are good now.
Things are good.
I can manage my drink. I'm a man,
I'm a total man.
I'm a total man now. I can manage my drink. So I can drink a lot and I'll drive back at high speed. I remember there's a time I was overtaking this bus and it was so close I could have had an accident, but I didn't really realize. I remember this vividly because I know God wants me to remember. Because there was a car coming and I was able to cut in quickly, but I remember the bus behind me hooting loudly. Like I just pulled something that I should have died. And even the owners of the car would call me and tell me, Daniel, why are you driving like that? Because they'd see the speedometer is high. Me, I'm having fun. I'm high. One tire burst, that would have been it. One tire burst, that would have been it. But I didn't die. So, of all jobs, they needed to move me from Kirinyaga to Kisii, where I come from, to go work there. So that's when I had put pressure that we fix the car at home. So the car at home was being fixed by Fundis in Kirinyaga. and fundis from Kirinyaga who go downtown, you know what they do. They drink also. So our day would start with them in up or downtown. It's called Grogan. Start with hard liquor. They are bad hard liquor. Buy spare parts, go fix the car. And then by now they know I love alcohol. So through the day we are drinking.
Instead of fixing the car?
Well, they're fixing, but I'm sure even they keep fixing it so they can continue enjoying the benefit of being with me. Because I used to always find, an alcoholic will always find a way to drink. Easily. I would think out of the box and find money and drink. Out of the box. But most of the times it's debts. It's debts. You've convinced somebody, you have an easy tongue, you're smooth with your words, easy with your words, and you get alcohol.
Does it teach you? It is the addiction that teaches you these ways of getting?
No, I believe that naturally we are gifted, but now my mom once told me, my son, your mouth can be used for good or for evil, and that's why I'm using it now for good. Then primarily it was just evil, manipulative. It was manipulate people into giving you money, come up with a scenario that is not there. So you can just get alcohol. So by the time the car was fixed, I was called by my boss at the office for ABL because I had not reported to Kisii. I reported and I went without a car and I was sent back.
Because they needed you to have a car?
Yes. And I remember when I went to Kisii, I was at a point of alcohol poisoning. Because when I got there, I met some other alcoholics who bought me a lot of spirit. And I remember that night, I couldn't eat. I was vomiting. That's alcohol poisoning, when nothing else can come into your body. Now, when I came back to Nairobi to pick up the car, finally it was working. It wasn't really working. It was a car, it was dead. It was brought back to life. When I went to ABL and I walked in, I remember the boss looking at me and he moved behind because he could smell the alcohol. And he asked me, "What are you drinking?" That question means I was really smelling of cheap alcohol. And he told me, "You have not reported to your job. We have to let you go." My heart sank. I was like, what next? So I went back to Roysambu into hiding, looking for marijuana, looking for cheap alcohol. That cycle began again. Of course, I had to go back home. It wasn't sustainable. You can't live in someone's house. They have their budget of food. And I went back home. So at home, it was more marijuana, more marijuana, more marijuana. Every day, wake up. And it was an escape.
This is you at home?
This is me at home. I'd wake up, leave the house, no one sees me. I have a few coins, go buy weed, smoke, come back, sit down, watch a movie. Close to depression, but this used to help me escape my reality. Now, another substance of choice I was introduced to as soon as I finished university, Mogoka. The popular Mogoka. Mogoka has become popular. I was telling somebody, there's a day I was buying Mogoka and I was standing. Then all of a sudden there's a good perfume around us, and we're like, what? Then you look down, you see some beautiful feet. And I'm like, this is someone's daughter buying Mogoka. World has changed. So Mogoka was another coping mechanism. Mogoka is a stimulant, And when you chew it, you get elevated. You feel smart. You feel brilliant. You feel even the conversations you have are serious conversations. But there's nothing you're talking. Nothing. Castles.
It's a feeling coming from you, but not really the reality.
It's not the reality. Then tomorrow, all you spoke about is you were just building castles. Then Mogoka, there's this thing they call Bablast. Bablast is now withdrawal for Mogoka, because you gave the brain too much stimulation, the dopamine. Now tomorrow, your brain is behind, it's lagging, because if I could say, it excreted too much of the dopamine. So, and then now it would deny you sleep. So I used to find an excuse to go and chew, and my parents were living far behind Karen, a place called Gataka. So being at home, getting out was logistics, transport,
Difficult, yes.
get onto a bike, that whole cost. So you'd have to make sense of your travel. So I'd plan to leave and maybe come back after 2 days. So
where would you go? And what would you be telling your parents?
They really didn't have much to ask me by that point. I'm now a man. If I've gone, I've gone. The only question they'd ask me is where they'd be in a position to ask me that when I need money. But as long as I'm not asking for money, so
they're seeing something is going on.
They know, they can see it. They can see it, but they don't know how to help. They don't know. They have spoken to me. My dad has told me. I remember him talking to me in the sitting room and telling me, Daniel, your friends right now. I remember the time my dad told me, your friends right now are getting married. I said, yeah, that's them. That's them. Then he said, oh, now you know how to talk. Because I felt like it was a very intimidating statement he was giving me, and it was not helping me feel any better about my situation, nor was it a solution. I knew my friends are doing well. That's why I was hiding.
You have other siblings?
Yes. My brother, who is abroad, is 5 years older than me, and then I have 3 sisters who follow me. Of course, they were all concerned. It was obvious that Daniel is battling. Daniel.
And the mother always comes out and tries to talk about with the son.
Yes, they really did try. I mean, the episodes, Jagero, are so many. There's a time I was called for a job interview, and I left Roysambu to come change. I was meant to go home on Sunday, so I can go for the interview on Monday, but I didn't. I spent the night. I was the lady. I spent the night, didn't go home, and that lady was actually telling me to go. Because she said, tomorrow you have an interview, go home. May I stay to drink? I woke up with a withdrawal. I drank a bit more, rushed home from Roysambu across, put on a suit, and my mom just told me, God bless you, but she could just see this boy is not ready for this interview. I went for the interview, and they're talking to me, and they asked me, did you drink last night? And of course, I mentioned yes. They said, do you drink often? I said, oh, socially.
Do you think they were seeing it?
They could see it. They could see it. And that company, actually, little did I know that later in life, the owner of that company would become a good friend of mine. And I didn't get the job, of course. And I remember even going the second day, that same day to KCB. There was another interview I was meant to sit with, and the ladies at the reception told me, Guy, you're smelling of alcohol. You're going to go for an interview like that? Because it comes from here. It's not the breath, it's from the stomach. It's corroded with all you drank last night.
Inapanda Jiju?
I don't know.
Ama it's just the skin emitting it?
Yes, so, I feel so. Yeah, because it's the smell of the stomach. And this was regular. It wasn't that we drink daily, by all means. If not, make sure the marijuana is in plenty. And if those were not there, it would be a very miserable night. So we would do, by all means, would even look for, we call it nyongi, smoke weed, just to escape. It was an escape, but at the same time, it was an addiction. So I got a job at a nice place, Crown Paints. They used to fly me out of the country. I remember that when I went for the interview for accounts, they noticed immediately that I'm not meant to be in accounts, I'm meant to be in sales. Thank God I got that job. It was through my dad who spoke to somebody, and that person now said, okay, this guy can do well in sales. I lost that job in 1 month. 1 month. Drinking. Now you have money. At the time I used to come to the office, I've drank a beer. Then you get this silly confidence that it's normal because of the culture, Kenyan culture. The adverts we used to hear when we were young, Bili Mbili kama kawaida. Those adverts, you think that is normal. And that's how you justify your drinking, that everybody drinks. But not like you.
Not like you?
Not like you.
And you can't see that it's not like you.
You can't see, you're just justifying it, And my boss immediately noticed, this guy is here to have fun. And they'd send me to Rwanda. Even remember in Rwanda, there's a time I actually overspent the money, and they used to give me a lot of money. And I even asked a client to give me money. And that client told my boss. My boss was like, what? So my boss already knew that this is not sustainable. This guy is not going to help us. So I lost the Crown Paint job.
In 1 month?
In 1 month. I was back into depression.
And what does your father say? Because he had a lot of speaking for you to get this job.
What else could he do? I remember the time I came from the airport and I came home, I was so drunk. They looked at me, they couldn't believe it. But you see, the thing is, they also didn't understand. Like, my dad would look at me and go like, your grandfather is a reverend. I don't drink. Where have you gotten this habit from? But on my mom's side of the family, there's a lot of alcoholism. It's there. That's why I'm telling you, it's a genetic thing. Not the behavior, but the gene. There is how you respond to alcohol. Because
how it messes you up.
Yes, because my brother has drunk alcohol. My sisters have drunk alcohol. My brother stopped drinking, but he didn't get to this point. My sister, who follows me, knows that he has to be cautious with it because at times she'll find her guard down and she'll drink a lot. The one who follows her also knows that this alcohol, I have to be very careful with it. She's aware. You get? So that's a genetic thing. For some people, they'll drink and they don't, I don't want it anymore.
It's very interesting when you say that, because in my family, I don't have a problem with alcohol at all. My friend over here, these guys, I can tell them, I don't want to drink, and just chill with them and they're drinking.
And they're drinking, and you're fine.
And my sister, our eldest sister, has never touched it. And then the sister that follows never touched it. Then my two brothers can't just control themselves.
Genetics.
As
I'm telling you, it's good you know this, because you might find that you have the gene. It could be passed on to your child. So if you see your child misbehaving with alcohol, don't be alarmed. All you need to do is, the fact that you're educated, know how to assist him. Because he needs to understand that I even hear that there are cultures, somebody mentioned this to me, that some cultures, they used to tell their people, here in Kenya, we are not, I think it's in the Kalenjin community, because there's a lot of drinking there. They'd say, in this line, in our clan, we are not drinking, because they knew what alcohol does to them. Meaning they were aware. So even like for you, you need to be aware. The fact that it doesn't react to you like that doesn't mean you don't have the gene. It could be with your child. So immediately your child drinks, if he will, at all, and you see some particular behavior, then you know this is a potential alcoholic, and then you can know how to assist him because you've seen it in your family. Yeah, that's the most important thing. That's why I keep on telling people, don't point fingers at people, because you don't even know if you're a carrier.
I think it is the conversation that is very difficult. How do you start this conversation with somebody that you are seeing is on the red?
Now, most of the times, this conversation is being held a bit too late. Here I'm talking about the early stages. It could be even something you don't have to mention when you discovered they drink. It could just be a general conversation you have with them as they are growing up about alcoholism and how there's a probability that they could have a gene. It's just a good conversation to have with them so they know. Like if I had this conversation, okay, who would have had it with me? Because then I was not listening to my parents. But I feel like the way my kids listen to me now, because I'm very open with them and we talk. We sit down and we talk. At a particular point, I'll tell them, listen, in our family, there's a problem with alcohol. I had it, and I don't want you guys to go through the same, so you be aware. I think that's the best prevention you can have. I just have a candid conversation with them so they understand and they know that my body could react. So immediately they drink and one of them blacks out and this is what daddy told me. So this is not good for me. Yeah. Then now from there we can see how, because most of the times the reason why they would continue is friends. So you can try and see how to assist them around that discussion to do with friends. But by the time somebody is too deep into the addiction, having that conversation with him, you as an individual would not help. It would only help if you go, okay, if you understand where they're coming from. That is different. When somebody sees you're not looking at them from a
judgmental point.
Yes, from an understanding perspective, like, it's not you, it's your genes, and you've found yourself here and you're still struggling because you're still trying to prove something to the world, but your genetics don't allow you to drink responsibly. That's the truth. and it would be good if you decided to get help. You know, when somebody hears that, and I think it comes so easy from me because I've been there. It's easier. They say send a thief to catch a thief. So send an alcoholic. So at that point, I think that's where some of my services come into play, because it's easier for me because I understand the pain he's going through. Alcoholism is bad. Those withdrawals in the morning are severe, and I'm not even gotten to the the part where it became where death was gave me several attempts. Through the alcohol, so I was staying in Langata with my friends.
This is after Crown?
Yes, I went into hiding. I stayed in Langata.
You are not married yet?
Not yet. And it was hiding. I was just trying to, while I was hiding there, I was trying to show that I'm independent. But I was sleeping in a sitting room with people who are younger than me. I was trying to prove to myself that I can be independent, but I was not. So I started working for an insurance firm, and I was doing okay. Then I met my wife. I met her at a time when these friends had moved out of Langata, so we got a place with my friend, another friend in Langata, and I told my brother to assist me to pay rent for a month or two until I pick up my feet, and he said fine. So,
did your brother ever have a conversation with you? Because we have heard about your mother and his struggles with your father. Your brother, he knows about this because your parents have told him.
Many times. I think I just don't remember them, but many times he called me to ask. But you see, he was asking from a different person. What's this problem, Daniel, with these things, you know? And then of course I'd deny, I'm okay, I'm fine. And then that manipulative mouth would convince him over the phone, I'm okay. But 2 days later, he'll hear I'm in hospital, you know. So I'm not okay. So I met my wife, and through my housemate, he met a girl in the club, and that girl was coming to see him the following day at the Wines and Spirits where we are, and she came with her friend. And that's how I met her. And she didn't judge me. My self-esteem was down. I was really hiding. If I'd see somebody I know, I'd take a left. Because I didn't want that question of, so what are you doing with yourself? You're doing nothing. You're sustaining an addiction. That's all you're doing. That's all.
That's a very interesting phrase. That's a very interesting phrase.
It is what it is. It's a reality. Because all you're doing is looking for money to drink or to smoke. Because that's all the brain is allowing you to do. So we met, and she is a good woman. And there was a time, she didn't mind where I was sleeping. You know, I was sleeping in a living room because I think I was paying a quarter of the rent. She didn't judge me for that. And also, you know, the thing about alcoholism, I think one of the reasons why alcoholics, you will find that their wives, even if you read, there's this book called The Big Book. It's for alcoholics. It's written by the gentleman who started AA. You'll find many of the stories, alcoholics don't lose their wives easily. But I think I found out why. I think it's because when you're chasing an addiction, you have no room for women. You have no room or time for women. All you want is alcohol. Or, in my case, mugoka, chewing. Or marijuana. You have no time for all these other things. Which is better ground. Rather than, you know, they normally say, if a man is not drinking or smoking, he's
in the women.
He's in the women. It's either or.
The judges a lot. Not very true.
Not very true. Yeah. So, but there's a point there. There's a point about it. If spiritually, I think I could say it's about having a God. Every man needs a God in their life. So you need to choose. You can never be empty, or something else will come in. So there's a point we started staying together. I think this happened when the guys I was staying with, I moved back to Roysambu because we couldn't keep the house in Langata. So I could keep my job. And one of them abused me one day in front of ladies. I came back to the house and I was chewing. And I gave my opinion on something, and he said, Daniel, you cannot afford to talk and you can't even buy tokens. I said, what? You said,
an indictment.
What? I said, enough. I told him, you'll never talk to me like that again. So I told my wife, it's either I go back home or I stay with you. She said, I don't know how that looks like, but let's give it a try. So it actually helped. I became more serious with my work. But
where are you working at this time?
I was working for insurance, a company, Britam. I was selling insurance. And so it goes without saying that my wife became an enabler. I would convince her to give me 200 bob to buy mogoka when I'm not working. But she would motivate me into working, and I'd go work. After finish work at lunchtime, 2 o'clock, I go and chew. Then I come back, try and get some money, buy a quarter of whatever I drink, and then some marijuana, and I'm okay. And would sit up and talk with her till like 3 a.m., just talking, And we really developed a good friendship, in those formative years. And then she got pregnant. Remember, this time I've met her parents, but I haven't done the official, what the laws would call the IA, the introduction and the wedding. So I haven't done that yet, and I couldn't do it because there was no money. So she got pregnant and we moved to Ngong town. And I mean, the drinking went on every day. But this was having an effect on my body. And even before I say Ngong town, there's a day in Langata, because we were staying in Langata. My cousin, he passed on, even he was an alcoholic. He came to the house and we drank. He had a bottle, it was called Kibao. And we drank a bit of it, and I told him, let's go outside and watch football, because I was having a pain. I think that's the liver area. And I told him I don't want to drink anymore. But as much as I didn't want to drink, that was what I felt, because I was not feeling well. The brain is still telling you, I don't care. I want that. So I went and I tried drinking beer with some friends. I couldn't finish it. And that night I was meant to go out with my wife. So I just told my friends, I'm going to sleep. And I went home and I told my wife on phone, I don't think we'll go out today. I'm not feeling well. She said, fine. So she came home and she found me blacked out. When I woke up, I was in hospital. So apparently I was having some sort of seizures at night. I'd wake up and walk and vomit, come back. Even at times I'd make some noise. It's like a foreign entity was in me. And there's something about alcoholism or excessive drinking and with some spirituality. Something I once read, that if you subject your body to too much of these toxins, you can open up for foreign entities to get into you. Because I never used to understand what is that I used to do at night. Because I would not remember. She'd tell me, you woke up, you started walking around in circles. It's like witchcraft. So eventually they take me to hospital. So the only logical explanation is somebody had spiked my drink. Had put for me mchele. But that was alcohol poisoning, because I woke up and I had a drip. But I was looking at that drip, wanting it to end, because my body was craving alcohol. I could feel it. I still remember that feeling, looking at the drip. It's not ending because it's going slowly. Immediately we finished like this. We left the hospital. I was going to look for alcohol. My wife couldn't believe it. She thought it was madness. She was like, you've left hospital and you're going to look for a drink. You want to waste your life? So I came and I convinced her, and we spoke nicely, and I told her I'm going to buy Smirnoff Ice. It's like soda. She said, fine.
Smirnoff Ice is like soda to you?
Yes, it was like soda to me then. Because I used to just drink liquor with no mixer neat. And I used to drink it like water. And without even cringing, it was normal. It had gotten to that point. Thanks.
Right. So she tells you to...
Yes, that I'm wasting my life, and then I get this man of ice. It was... we met each other halfway with this man of ice rather than spirit. And life went on, but the following day, immediately she went to work, I got spirit. So moving on, the cycle was there. I'd go to work, And to stay away from excessive drinking, I would chew. So chewing would be, I used to call it the referee. It would used to manage me. It never. My one of my uncles, who's a pharmacist, used to call it the lesser evil. But I disagree. It's a serious evil. So I used to chew, because if I don't chew, the addiction would disturb me, and I probably don't have money to drink. Or if I do, it's not enough. And if I buy 1 quarter, I'll probably drink 3 or 4. And if I drink 3 or 4, I'll go to hospital. So I was stuck there. So we moved to Ngong. We got my firstborn son. And on the first day we were taking him for clinic, I had been going through a binge, a stupor. A stupor is where if I had overdrunk the previous night, I'd find myself, like, for a whole week, I cannot function. All I'd be doing is walking to the wines and spirits back. It's like a severe withdrawal, and you have no control over yourself, the stupor. It's like you're mad. Even when you have vomited, you'd try and sleep, drink some water, you'd wake up to go and look for more alcohol and mix it with water. That's why I tell you, it's a sickness of the mind. It's not normal to do that. So we took my son for clinic, and we came back. In the morning, I had drunk 1 quarter. As we were going, I drank another quarter. As we were coming back, I was on my 3rd quarter.
Your wife is looking.
She's looking, but you see, I'm not doing it too obviously, but I have it. And she's already sort of used to this, and she knows even though I try, he will not listen. So by the time we come back in the evening, I'm probably on my 4th. And then I lose memory. What happens is that I woke up at night, I started walking around in circles again. The time we have a newborn. So she has to juggle between taking me to hospital, so she called the watchman, we went to Ngong District Hospital. And I don't remember all this, but they were able to convince me to go. So I went to the hospital. So she had to go back to the house because it was cold. So at the hospital, they realized they can't do much for me. So they decided to take me to Kenyatta. They put me in the ambulance. So when my sister came with my wife, I think my wife had left now our son with her mom. They came to the hospital, they didn't find me. So they were told they have gone to Kenyatta. So they came to Kenyatta, and then they come to Kenyatta, they don't know where to find me. They're coming to casualty, they're finding people all over the place, hurt. So they are praying that Dan is okay. So I remember Kenyatta briefly because I woke up. Imagine waking up and all you're seeing around you is people, somebody, the skull has cracked here, somebody, you think you're in hell. So I woke up and I started shouting because I panicked. Where am I? How am I here? So I remember some of the doctors laughing at me, nurses, and they came and they sedated me and they tied me onto a bed. So they found me. Fortunately, they found me, and the nurse who brought me didn't leave. So she was paid some money, and then I was taken to Nairobi Hospital. Now, my friend who I used to drink with in Kilimani, who is a doctor now, was at Nairobi Hospital. So he was told I'm coming, and he saw me, and they had to, what did they do to resuscitate me? They put something on my nose, so I was able to be resuscitated. And my dad was working in Kisii. He was working for the county, and he drove all the way to Nairobi. So when I'm waking up in Nairobi Hospital, my dad is standing beside me and he's crying. So I look at him and I'm like, what is happening here? You don't know. You can't recollect. Do you remember drinking quarters?
The 4 of them.
The 4 of them. That's all you remember. But now you're in a hospital bed.
Which brand was this?
Chrome. It's Chrome. But there was a lot of...
It's amazing how they call these things. Chrome, Kibao, what? I mean, what kind of names are these?
Well, at that particular point, there was also a lot of entry, foreign, what can I call them? They were not, some of those brands were not original. And there was a lot of warning on news that there's a lot of liquor that is going on around that is not original. And of course, wines and spirits
are not safe.
Are not safe. Of course, wines and spirits would buy them because there's, the profit margin is high. So you don't know. You go bear the consequences. So I was moved to HDU. So in HDU, the doctor came and he looked at me and he asked me, Daniel, what do you do for a living? And I told him I sell insurance. And he told me, did you strike a deal? I said, no. Then why did you drink so much? Because I think you probably got a deal and you made a lot of money. And you also... So if he only knew. I mean, if by the time somebody's coming to hospital because of drinking, that's an alcoholic, you know. So they moved me to the ward. Thanks to God, you know, that I was working for Britam. I had an inpatient cover. So it was not put there. That was alcohol. And I was discharged. Immediately I left. Then it used to be called Nakumat at Karen, because we were going to Ngong. So I told them, let's stop here. I want to buy some Minute Maid juice. They stopped. I crossed from Nakumat across the road, Mogoka. I went and bought Mira. That time I've convinced myself I'm only going to chew Mira, not going to drink. But another interesting thing is, through the nights I spent in hospital, I drew closer to God because I was able to see how he took care of me. I remember when I was in HDU, I couldn't sleep because I would hear people on machines. You try to sleep, something scares you, you wake up, so you have to stay awake because you don't know if you'll sleep and not wake up. And I got to pray a lot. Those things brought me closer to God because you're at the gate of death. So I went and I got Mira, and we went home, and my mom-in-law had taken care of my son.
Were you at the hospital?
For 2 days. So immediately we got home, my mom-in-law went, she was taking care of my son. My wife told me something interesting, that when I was going through all those challenges at hospital, my son was crying loudly at home. So that made me, there's a connection. This life and death, there's normally a connection, especially between father and child, mother and child. But I started chewing. Immediately they went and I chewed and I was like, this Mirai Nifikishi is not getting me anywhere. So I went for my quarter. And my friends who knew I had gone to hospital were like, Daniel, you're getting a quarter. I'm like, just one. And that cycle started again. Following day, you wake up late, go look for Mogoka. Chew, get a quarter. And that time, you've come back from hospital, you're feeling a bit better, you've been given good food, you're in a better position, you've been detoxed. The cycle continued. Got my second-born son. And then, not even before I got my second-born son, there was a day I was at home, and I was feeling kind of depressed because I was worried about rent, and I was just worried about life. I'm in the bedroom, I'm feeling sick, I'm hungovered. There was some alcohol there, but I didn't want to drink it because I was feeling bad. And my mom-in-law is in the sitting room. I'm just feeling like a loser. So I called my sister's children's dad. He also passed. He was an alcoholic. I could see it in him. He was way into alcoholism before I did. But of course, that made us connect because we were all about the drink. So I called him and I told him, I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling locked. I need to get out. Can we hang out? He said, okay, come. So I went to Rongai. And he bought a bottle of Jameson, bought food, went to the house. So I remember drinking that Jameson and drinking, having a good time. But then I started feeling that pain again. So I said, let me drink Guinness. So he sent for Guinness. So in the morning, I woke up. It was raining. This I remember vividly, blurry. And I walked through the mud. I didn't even tell anyone I'm leaving because I was going to take my son to clinic. 2 weeks before that, my phone had an issue. So I took it to Safaricom. So Safaricom formatted the phone. And when I put on the phone, it asked me, enter emergency number. So I did that. I put my wife's. I didn't know why it was asking me that, so I just put my wife. So when somebody clicks on the phone, because there's a passcode, but there's a number there. So as I was leaving from Rongai, I was using the back route of Kiserian coming. I don't have good memory of that, but I know I vomited in the matatu. and Matatu people were not happy. So they got me to Kiserian. And at Kiserian, that walking started. I started walking. I was told this story by a taxi man. I started walking across the road.
Back and forth.
Back and forth. And there was a policeman there and he didn't help me. So some thugs had seen me. So they came and they took me. And they wanted to take me into some corridor to rob me. And then some taxi men had been noticing me. So they came and they stopped those thugs. They put me in their taxi. So they look at me, they knew this guy is not okay. So they looked into my pocket, there was 1,000. Then they saw the phone and they locked. So my wife's number. So they called and said, do you know this guy? Yes, I'm trying to reach him. Yeah, we have met him. He's in a bad position. So they brought me to her. They took me to a hospital in Ngong. The hospital looked at me. They said there's nothing they can do for me. They moved me to Langata Hospital. At Langata Hospital, they put me on a detox. But they needed to still move me to HDU. So I remember waking up in an ambulance, being rushed. But imagine just waking up all of a sudden. Then you're hearing sirens. You look on the left, you see your wife. You don't know what's going on. I started crying because I was like, oh my God, not again. You know, these things catch you off guard. And so I was taken to HDU. So my wife tells me when I was taken to hospital. So when I got to hospital, my wife told me that I was hesitant to be admitted. I was telling her, I'm okay. We can go home. I'm okay. The doctors insisted, no. We have to detox him. I'll make sure he's stable. So I think the withdrawal got to me and I became violent. So they had to strap me onto the bed because I remember waking up in the morning very thirsty. Very thirsty. My lips were dry. Very thirsty. But then there was Sisal tied to the bed because I'd become violent. So even the nurses were scared of coming close to me. And so they finally came and gave me water. They moved me to HDU. No, they moved me to the ward. So I'm at the ward. The doctor is coming to see me. He comes, he opens the curtain like this. Same doctor. Same one. He said, you again? Here? You know, you don't even know what to say. You don't know what to say. You'll stop drinking. And he told me, if you continue, the next time it will be a coffin. I wonder why that doctor couldn't have thought that this is a case of alcoholism. I don't even know. You know.
Do you think that general doctors can diagnose and say that this guy is an alcoholic and probably talk to the people, the loved ones, to start the process of taking you for, looking for help, not just treating you for the pain, but going an extra mile of taking you to probably AR where you'd later end up?
I think what the doctors should have is they should have resource persons like me. Like you tell a family, listen, I think your son and daughter is battling with alcoholism. Now you guys don't know what alcoholism is, but I need you to talk to so-and-so so he can help you understand what your son is going through. Because you people are thinking it's just bad behavior. It's not that. It's a condition. Talk to so-and-so so they could enlighten you and see how he can talk to also your person and they can get help. I think that's the most important thing. That needs to be there at the hospital. Because I wonder, why didn't that conversation happen? But I don't even know if somebody else who had gone through what I have gone through would have come and spoken to me, I would have heard and maybe I'd have gotten treatment earlier. Maybe. So that was incident 2. I remember when it was time to be discharged, there was a back and forth because on the form it was written alcohol, something. So of course Britam, that was going to be an issue. But one of the people I knew at Britam told me he was sitting in the office of the boss, and that letter came, and he read it. Then he said, Orenge, shida yake na pombe ni nini? You know. Then he just looked at it. Then he just signed. That was God. That was God, because we didn't have the money for me to be discharged, and I was discharged. Same thing, Nakumat, Mira, same cycle, because I was trying all sorts of things. I remember calling my doctor friend once because he had asked me a question like, Daniel, what if you died? Do you want your children to to know that you are an alcoholic. But you see, even the way he said it is not the way it is understood now. Because he was saying it alcoholic, meaning you cannot manage your drink, not alcoholic as the condition. And I told him, I know what I'm going to do. I'm only going to drink Guinness. You know. And when you read the big book, the one I was telling you for AA, you find everybody has gone through this. They said, I'll only drink beer. I'll only do this. All of these trials have been done. I'm not the first one. But at the end of the day, it's about getting to a point where you can say farewell to the drink.
So let's go to, I think we are almost out of 1 hour mark. 1.5. Let's go to now, let's go to your treatment. Well, how it, let's, in the next 10 minutes, we can talk about your treatment and how it came to be.
Okay.
And some of the lessons that you learned there.
So I got a job with a fintech, and I did very well in it because I loved the product, and it's new in the market, and it's something that many businesses need. So I excelled in it despite my addiction. So I was there for about 3 years. I joined in 2018. And there was a time in 2018 I fell into a stupor, and we were moving out of Ngong to my mom's house because we couldn't afford rent. The landlord told us to move. And I missed work for a week, and my boss asked me a question when I reported back. Daniel, do you have a problem? You know, he also drinks. He asked me, you have a problem? I told him, no. He said, okay. I have not forwarded this issue because you know you have children and you need the job. I had 2 sons then. So I went back to work. Moving on forward, 2021, after COVID, we had gotten back to work. We were having many events at the office because it's a garden. And of course, I would be seen drunk, and I was the head of sales. Many times I'd come for Monday meetings smelling of alcohol because I'd drink on Sunday, of course. At times I'd miss meetings. So my performance generally wasn't good. And I had really, this company had become like a family to me. So even letting go of you was a problem. But by this time I had crossed the line. So there's a time I had taken leave so I can go and relax. And of course, during that leave, I got into excessive drinking. So we had just gotten my 3rd born, my baby girl. And my mom, my wife was worried that I might need to go to hospital. So she called my mom. That time my brother and his wife and his family were around. She said, Daniel is looking like he might become sick. So she said, tell him to come home. So they came up with a trick and they told me to go home because my mom is being harassed. So I got into a taxi and I went home. I blacked out. So the following day I woke up with a withdrawal. That's the thing about stupors. It's severe. You need a drink or you'll be mad. It can even lead to death. That's why they normally say it needs medical practitioners. Some people don't go straight into rehab. They have to go to hospital. So the withdrawal can be reduced. So my mom saw me getting out of the house, trying to sneak out, and she followed me with some workers. And I went and I pulled the gate, and my mom came to hold the gate, and I pulled it, and my mom fell down. I just had a fall like a sack. And I remember turning around and looking at my mom, and I was like, what have I done? But I didn't have time. I was still focused on going to get a drink, and I don't have money. I don't even know how I'm going to get it. So the employees wanted to come and hold me, and I picked up stones. And they held back. So I went. Then my brother followed me. And I clenched my fists. And my brother came and he said, Dan, what do you want? I said, just take me home. So they took me home. I got home, got out of the house, convinced a friend to send me some money, bought a quarter to reduce the withdrawal. It's like madness. It's a bad place to be in. The following day I needed to go back to work. I was called back in. That night, we went with my wife and her friend. They wanted to talk to me and their husband about trying to moderate my drinking. And I listened to them, but I was only there for the alcohol. So I drank. The following day I was meant to go to work. I didn't go. I told my boss at 3:00, I texted him, and my son is not feeling well. My boss already knew this is alcohol. So he had to step into my shoes and go and manage the sales team. And he told me the following day, if you want to go drink, I can give you time to go drink. He really made noise and I panicked because I was like, I cannot be in a position where I can't pay rent, pay fees. What will happen to me as a man? So he called me to the office and I went to the office the following day. I remember talking to one of my spiritual dads and I asked them, do you think I need rehab? Because my sister told me, get the money you'll get, go to rehab. And she had already told me, by the way, you have lost your job because she was HR. My spiritual dad told me, no, you don't need rehab. Rehab is for people who are, rehab is already stigmatized, people who are overboard. But they never used to see what happens at night. So I went and I saw my boss. And I was praying and I told God, please intervene. So I went. The CEO saw me. He's my good friend. He said hi. He went. Then the boss came. He sat down. Then he had a conversation and he asked me, Daniel, I'm going to ask you this question again. You've been doing so well, but now all of a sudden, this year, things have gone. Do you have a drinking problem? And I admitted yes. But I said that to save face. Hopefully that statement will keep my job. He said, good. It's good you've admitted. That's the first step. Now, I'll tell you this as a friend. Go get help. And I told him, yes, I'm going to go get help. Okay. Now, as a director, we're letting you go. I felt like I almost wanted to cry because I was like, what luggage is this God has given me to carry? It's so heavy. I have children. Then he went on to say, but if you go get help, if you go to rehab, 3 months and you show us evidence, we might consider taking you back. I clung to that statement. And as I was leaving the office, and I was just talking to God on the road, and I asked God, I started reflecting. Every man gets to that junction in your life where you need to make one serious choice. And I thought about how I've lost so many jobs. There's another job, an Indian company I got. I lost it in one day. How much has been stolen from me, from alcohol. I said enough. And I was like, come on, rehab. Let's try. So the following day I had a conversation with my wife at night and I told her, they have let me go, but they have said if I get help, they might take me back. My wife wasn't too optimistic about them taking me back. But my common sense was this: if every day I spend 1,000 shillings on drugs, can that 1,000 shillings be in the house for food? Let me be in rehab. So I spoke to my brother and my cousin. They said they'll support me. And that's when now I went around looking for rehab. And I looked for rehab that has a gym because I remembered the gym helped me in university. And I found Asumbi. Asumbi the current one had 2 stones to carry because I was wondering, what am I going to do for 3 months? So I might as well be lifting weights. And on the 11th of January 2021, I went into rehab. Yeah.
How was it like?
So rehab, you go through a program. It's called the 12-step program. First, it introduces you to what alcoholism is. So you first understand what you're fighting. That's how I was able to understand that it's a genetic condition I have. That this whole period I've been drinking, I've been trying to prove my genetics wrong, that I can drink responsibly, but I cannot. So now, the 12-step program is to help me structure myself to live a life away from alcohol. Because remember now your brain structure has changed. So when I went in, there's a movie I once watched, and I think it was a documentary or something I watched, and this person said, success is not a destination, it's a daily routine. So I knew that every day I'm going to wake up and study God's word, spend time with God, and I'm going to read a book, then I'm going to exercise. Those 3 things. And I did them aggressively every day as I was going to class doing the 12-step program. And I was passionate, though I was worried, will this thing really work? Little did I know I was discovering wellness, because that's what wellness is about. It's about exercising the pillars of wellness. And those 3 are the first 3 pillars. And I did the I was good at rehab. Even the time they allowed me twice to leave with my family and come back because they could see that I'm serious about pursuing my sobriety. And I was a good influence to the people around there. And after 3 months, I left. They even allowed me to leave with a taxi. And I got home. It was weird. It was very weird. I remember my Mugoka person seeing me when I was going to shave. Said, "Hey, utakuja?" I just smiled and I looked away. And I went for my first haircut, drinking Fanta.
Which one?
The orange one. It always used to be Hunters. And that's how my journey began.
Which camera am I looking at when finishing? Okay. So, my friend, I think we need to have a part 2. This is amazing because we have not talked about rehab at all.
Yes.
And I think we can meet again and talk about rehab.
Sure.
Thank you very much for sharing. That story is amazing, man. I think you speak so slowly and everybody is like, oh, I love this story and congratulations for jumping over that hurdle.
Yeah.
I think that the best thing, my brother now has not gone to rehab, but I think he got really tired of it.
Yes.
He decided that this thing is gonna kill him. So he's not been drinking for the last 1.5 years. So maybe one of these days you'll come to Nairobi and you guys can have a chat.
Yes.
About going forward.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Yes.
And wish you the best.
Thanks for having me. And I mean, as your listeners are paying attention and listening to the story, I hope they have understood what alcoholism is, and I offer support.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have a family member, or if you yourself are battling with addiction, I'm available to offer support.
Thank you very much. All right, people of the internet, thank you very much. That was Daniel Orenge, and this is Dialogues with Jekero. Please comment. Please leave a reply to any comment that is there. Consider